motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. This weekend's major upset. Mary Spencer, highly touted amateur and highly touted professional, suffered a shock upset loss at the hands of Belgium's own Femke Hermans, a former champion, a seasoned professional, a seasoned veteran. And that's what won her this fight this past weekend on Friday, north of the border in Canada. It was very hard indeed to give Mary Spencer a round.
After the first round.
It's the only round I could give her, the first round. And every round thereafter, it was all downhill for then unbeaten Mary Spencer of Canada. That second round, up until that point, I have to say, I think that was the hardest round of Mary Spencer's entire professional boxing career, her career as a professional.
So far.
It was in that round that Femke Hermans really turned it on and put it on Mary Spencer. Landed a huge left hand that sent Mary Spencer to the canvas. The referee chose not to rule it a knockdown. He chose to rule it a slip, even though it was so obviously a knockdown off a punch, a clean punch.
I'm going to break this down for you as concisely as I can, because a lot went wrong for Mary Spencer in this fight. When I say a lot, I mean a lot.
Up until this point, Mary Spencer had been plowing through most, if not all, of her opponents, getting a lot of respect by way of strength of arms. Her sheer size and power alone was enough to win her. For the most part, she's been able to overwhelm every girl opposite the ring she's faced, up until she came up against a former champion, an experienced and durable fighter who would not be bullied in Femke Hermans. A fighter who's fought some of the very best fighters anywhere at or around these weights. Fighters like former champion Alicia Napoleon, Clarissa Shields, Aline Cedar-Rose, Savannah Marshall, violently knocked out by Savannah Marshall. A victory that's aging like a fine wine for the Hartlepool woman who stopped Femke Hermans in violent fashion. Mary Spencer was unable to duplicate that success, and anybody who's been following Mary's career from the time she debuted till now was expecting something akin to the Savannah Marshall knockout, but that's not what happened.
I'll tell you, so much went wrong for Mary in this fight. It's almost hard to find the words to pinpoint any one thing, just any one thing, when so much went wrong.
It was obvious from the start that it was Mary's intention to plow through Femke Hermans. She got off to a fast start, big punches, big shots. She definitely wasn't there for a boxing match, and she wasn't fighting like she expected to go 10 rounds with this woman.
That was in the first round, and that come-forward aggression backfired in the second. She was sent to the canvas.
Femke Hermans, in that second round, got Mary Spencer's respect and landed some big punches, very big shots.
A big wake-up call for the unbeaten up-and-comer that she wasn't the only puncher in the room.
Bear in mind that Femke Hermans isn't even known as a puncher, a big puncher, but because Mary's so green and leaving herself wide open to be countered, and Femke Hermans landed a lot, and I mean a lot, of counter shots.
But Mary, in attempting to come out of her corner like a bat out of hell and hit the gas straight away, go for big punches, go for a knockout, in essence, she almost got herself knocked out. Opening up as much as she did, she was open to be countered, and Femke Hermans, the veteran that she is, she knew what to exploit and when.
Mary was banged up and breathing with her mouth open after just a few rounds because Mary, she's not used to being hit.
And Femke Hermans is.
Femke Hermans, who was firing on all cylinders, I want to say that has to be a career best performance from Femke. It's the best I've ever seen her. She even showed a bit of switch hitting in the early goings of the match, switching from orthodox to southpaw.
Combinations, counter-punching, you name it.
And she did it. Whenever Mary Spencer would try to get something going, Femke Hermans would in fact shut her down and shut her out. When she wasn't countering Mary Spencer's straight punches from the outside coming in, she was outworking her mid-range to inside with combination punching, sequences and flurries.
Salvos and waves of punches, waves of shots.
Not kidding around when I say that after that first round, it was very hard for me to find a round to give Mary Spencer. She was losing this thing, and she was losing this thing wide. Everything you can imagine,
everything you could have imagined that could go wrong, did go wrong.
You know what it is? They took on too much too soon because they were overconfident. Overconfident because Mary was a standout amateur, and as a professional, she was plowing through almost everybody you put in front of her.
You know what kind of pedigree she's got, and you look at her, the sheer size of the woman and the punching power she packs, and I think the power is real.
Yeah, I still think Mary's a big puncher. It's just that sometimes it takes more than just a big punch to get the job done. We've seen that time and time again.
Some fighters are quite at home dealing with big punchers, and Femke Hermans, she's one of them. Moreover, she was a far more experienced fighter going into this fight than Mary, and Mary's deficiencies...
Mary being as green as she was, and perhaps as overconfident, it all worked against her in this fight. Can she rebound? I believe she can. She has the pedigree to do so. I don't think a lot of people thought, way back when, all those years ago, when Natasha Jonas was violently knocked out by Vivian Obanoff, that she would go on to become the fighter that she became. The same applies to Mary.
She can bounce back. She can rebound.
She just happened to bite off more than she could chew because likely she and her team were overconfident based on her pedigree and all the success that they were already having, and I can hardly blame them because I expected her to plow through Femke Hermans. It didn't happen that way.
Congratulations to Femke, and there's more work needs doing for Mary.
Clearly, she's not ready for the big dogs.
Those upper echelon fighters at her around these weights.
Men's heavyweight news. Otto Wallin is staying sharp in camp and hopes to face Anthony Joshua next. One can make the argument that Anthony Joshua's indecisiveness in several areas, at least two that I can think of.
It's working against him here, that he hasn't decided who he's going to fight or who's going to train him. He's back on the hunt for a trainer.
He's back on the hunt. Heavyweight contender Otto Wallin has continued to train in order to stay prepared for a potential fight with former two-time world champion Anthony Joshua, according to Wallin's promoter Dmitry Salita. Otto is staying in the gym and sharp over the holiday season, Salita told Sky Sports. The holiday gift that he wants to deliver to the fans is a fight versus Anthony Joshua. Joshua is slated to return in the first quarter of next year.
And as stated, they haven't officially decided who he's going to fight or who's going to train him for said fight. And I can't tell you that it's at all encouraging that he's back to doing this after just one fight with Robert Garcia in his corner.
I like the Otto Wallin fight more than some other fights, some other suggestions that have been made for Anthony Joshua, because Otto Wallin would serve as a common opponent between him and Tyson Fury.
I like a Wallin fight next a lot more than I like a Dillian White rematch.
Wallin kept busy in 2022 by returning to the ring to pick up 2 decision wins. Promoter Eddie Hearn recently said that Joshua fought better opponents than Tyson, said Salita. Otto landed more punches on Tyson than anyone else, including Deontay Wilder and Vladimir Klitschko put together. Active fighters are judged by activity. Otto wants to fight Tyson. Joshua wants to fight Tyson. To mention the names that Eddie has been referencing for Joshua, he needs to show that he is still world class. Coming off 2 losses to Alexander Usyk, there is no better fight for either guy.
This is angling, and in the sport of boxing, there's always a bit of angling involved. If you're Otto Wallin, you might want a Joshua fight more than, say, a Wilder fight, because fighting Anthony Joshua will get you more money than fighting Deontay Wilder. And now is the most opportune time to fight Anthony, when he's on the rebound after 2 consecutive losses. That's if you're Otto.
If you're Anthony, you want to show people that you still got it. And who better against than a guy who went 12 rounds with Tyson Fury and gave him all he could handle in recent memory. Granted that Otto didn't beat Tyson Fury, that much is obvious, but he gave him that to which he had to work around. Gave him a nasty cut, even thumbed him. A bit of dirty boxing.
At minimum, what Otto Wallin did in that fight is prove that he's nobody's patsy and he's no pushover, because Tyson Fury couldn't push him over.
For his last fight, Anthony Joshua secured the services of veteran trainer Robert Garcia. He is currently hunting for a new trainer and testing out different coaches. In a recent interview, Joshua's promoter Eddie Hearn indicated that his boxer's next opponent will not be selected until Joshua finalizes his new training team, and this is more or less the indecisiveness that I was referencing.
Every everything has to be just so with Anthony. You know, Robert Garcia mentioned this very recently, and we talked about it here on the channel, how Anthony needs to get out of his comfort zone. He's entering into the second phase of his professional boxing career, and while there's no shame in losing 2 fights to Alexander Usyk,
There's no shame in that, but if he's to rebound from it, he needs to get it together, and he needs to get out of his own way. He needs to get out of his comfort zone, train in America.
you seem hell-bent on getting yourself an American trainer. You see how it worked for Tyson Fury enlisting the aid of Sugar Hill after sacking Ben Davison.
And we all know the difference getting an American trainer made for Vladimir Klitschko, the difference it made for then undisputed champion Lennox Lewis.
If that's the kind of change you're shooting for, and that's what you have in mind, I get it.
I understand it, but Robert Garcia, he may be onto something. Instead of having these guys come to you, why don't you go to them? Start from scratch. Change your decorum. Change your ambiance. Maybe even change some of the people you have in your circle.
Maybe you got too many yes men around you.
You need to go back to thinking like a challenger, because in essence, that's what you are.
Go back to thinking like a challenger instead of a champion, because you know what? You ain't got alphabet titles and sanctioning bodies weighing you down with their mandates anymore. You're free to roam, free to do things how you want to do things when you want to do them.
Don't feel pressured by talks of a Tyson Fury or a Deontay Wilder showdown. Lord knows Deontay Wilder didn't feel pressured to fight you when they landed on Robert Helenius.
They wouldn't even answer Eddie Hearn's emails.
Anthony Joshua is still a business. He's still a guy who's worth a lot of money, and he's still a guy who, when he fights, the world stops and watches. And it's because he's not perfect. It's because he could lose.
It's intriguing.
But I can't fight this feeling that there is some indecisiveness and some instability involved when it comes to Anthony. The outburst after the Usyk fight.
Chasing down those mouthy punks in that university.
Even if they deserved it, which I think they did, it does paint the picture that Anthony's more or less cracking under pressure. He needs to get himself back together.
And when he's out there looking for a trainer, it's almost like he's looking for something in someone else that he's supposed to find within himself.
An answer that no one else can give him.
The answer to a question: is he any good? Does he still got it?
I still think Anthony Joshua is one of the best heavyweights in the world. I think a lot of people feel that way, but it doesn't matter what they think. He's got to believe it.
It's all on him.
I like a Wallin fight more than a Dillian White rematch. I even, in some ways, like a Jermaine Franklin fight more than a Dillian White rematch. I don't really see a reason to revisit that fight.
You knocked that guy smooth out before. If you knock him out again, what does it mean?
What is it, wife? What are you taking, a stroll down memory lane? Revisiting your old stomping grounds? There's nothing to gain from stopping Dillian White again.
Give me Joshua versus Wallin, or Joshua versus Zhang, or even Joshua versus Franklin. I mean, they're both on the rebound. They both lost their last fight.
So there's a precedence. If Anthony can knock Jermaine Franklin out where Dillian White could not, that's encouraging.
More so if it's Otto Wallin instead of Jermaine. Tyson Fury could knock him out.
Otto's lone defeat that he has since rebounded off of was to Tyson Fury. And if you can stop Otto where Tyson didn't, well, that sends the right message. And those are good optics for Anthony Joshua. And finally, in men's welterweight news, the gory details as to why Errol Spence Jr. is having yet another extended stay away from the ring. Stuff started hurting after the accident. Expects to return in April, May, or June.
Sucks for the welterweight division. He's got 3 of the 4 titles.
While the injuries Spence sustained in the head-on collision December 10th aren't nearly as serious as the damage he endured in a one-car crash in October 2019, the unbeaten IBF, WBA, WBC welterweight champion admitted during an interview with Showtime's Brian Custer that he was hurt badly enough to need time off from training. Spence told Custer he had expected to announce his next fight, presumably against rival Keith Thurman, a few days after his SUV was hit head-on in the Dallas area. I was gonna have a fight announcement probably like 3-4 days after my accident, Spence said. But you know, stuff started hurting and things like that, so we kind of pushed it back and we'll wait on an announcement.
In my previous video, we talked about how these stints of inactivity, irrespective of why they happen.
I mean, this guy's losing his best years in a nutshell.
Flipping that Ferrari in 2019, the retina injury in 2021, more recently, this situation.
The 32-year-old Spence's injuries are significant enough that Spence probably won't fight until at least 2 months later than expected. Spence, who most recently defeated Yordenis Ugas by 10th round technical knockout April 16, expected prior to the accident to fight sometime in February. Probably like around May or June, April, May or June, said Spence, who didn't give specific details about his injuries. I've just gotta, talk to my team, hopefully, I'll recover 100%. I'm sure I'll recover 100% because I've been in worse accidents. But, talk to my team, and hopefully come up with a day that suits both of us and make it happen. Though judging from Errol Spence Jr.'s condition and how rotund he was.
Because he was in attendance for Martin versus Rivera. Frank Martin is his fighter.
This latest accident was said to have taken place December 10th. That's what, maybe 5 or 6 days ago? And look at the guy. Does he look like a guy who was preparing for a fight?
That up until the accident, approximately 6 days ago, this guy, in this condition, was getting ready to fight when? February?
You look over at Keith Thurman's social media, and it seems that he was already in preparation for a match. He was already, more or less, in camp, shedding the weight, shedding the pounds, whereas Errol...
You're saying that the accident 6 days ago is why you got to push back the fight date later on next year, but it doesn't look like you were getting ready for a fight in February.
Accident or no accident, it doesn't look like Errol was getting ready to come back early in the first quarter of next year. Thankfully, for emerging from a second car accident relatively unscathed, Spence couldn't help but question his luck during the interview with Custer. I can't win for losing, Spence said, but I mean, I'm doing great, man, very fortunate that a 14-year-old kid, stole his parents' car, and then, out of all people, that's, on the road, he runs into me. So, it's very unfortunate, but I survived, and I'm going to do all right, man, a couple bruises and things like that.
Errol Spence Jr. is intended to be the biggest name in the welterweight division. Coincidentally, he's one of the least active fighters in it.
In my last video, we talked about how that's not really good for the fighter. In this one, we'll talk about how that's not good for the division. If this guy's supposed to be the top draw in the welterweight division, and he's only fought once in the last 2 years, and he's got 3 titles.
Each one of those 3 titles he's got represents a title shot that ain't happening, represents a title that ain't in circulation because he's got it, and he's often injured, sparsely active.
So, fights aren't happening, title shots are not being given out, and money isn't flowing as much as it could be in the welterweight division, one of the more historically glamorous weights.
Not so glamorous anymore.
Not as long as Errol is its unified champion.